Talk about Drupal 8 Media, the legendary library unicorn, and how you can actually have reusable, storable, fieldable media just the way it is in 7 in 8. Also known as the talk about how many 80s references you can fit in 1 hour, because there are going to be a lot. I'm Adam Fuchs, and I look like this in all of the social media spheres, if you see me there. That's me in 8-bit. I work for Electric Citizen. I'm a front-end developer, and I've had my whole Drupal experience there. I've worked there for 2 years, so I'm still kind of new with the Drupal thing too. Basically, media, when we talk about it, I mean, it's so many things. You can have Facebook, Twitter, audio, all that stuff, but for most people and most sites that I've built, media is images, documents, and video. And we're going to mostly just talk about images today, just due to time constraints, but especially the way that I'm setting this up in Drupal 8, video and document is almost exactly the same. So if you can do this, that's pretty easy. So basically, how does the default work in Drupal 8? You get one image field, that's about it, and it works like this. You get to upload something, put in some alt text, title if you want, and that's what you get. That's about it. So not super sexy, but what's so bad about it? It's tedious to upload a new image every time. It's just, if you have a site with multiple editors, a couple hundred pages, you have to have a repository for your images you're trying to pull out. It's a pain. And there's no ability to add extra fields like captions and things. And sometimes captions are important because they can set the context of whatever you're talking about. So they're nice to have. So what do we do about it? We bring on the awesome. We want fieldable. We want to be able to add whatever fields we want to media and have them show up with no coding at all. We want it to be storable so that we can reuse it. And we want it to be responsive because everything should be responsive now. It just makes sense. So how we do it, we need to have the right tools for the job. We've got a set of 8 base modules that will get you done, and you can do this all without custom coding. It's easy to do once you have a roadmap. So you compose or require all of these things, and if you're going to be doing video and documents, you'll want these as well. Compose or require everything, because otherwise, if you just manually download those and install them, you won't get all of their dependencies, which are another 5 modules. So for my entire media build, I've got, 15 modules that I'm putting together, which sounds like a lot, but it's not that complex once you figure out how they work together. So the base is media bundles. Media bundles are basically like file types in D7. Pretty much the same thing. And I like to use, and you should use, one bundle for each type of media. That way you can have one browser for each type of media, so you're not trying to load a video into a document field and do crazy crap like that. So each type is its own bundle. And when you create one, name it and save. Do absolutely nothing else. That's the first step. Why? Because you have to have a source field in order for the bundle to actually know what it's going to be. But you have to have a bundle before you can add a field to it. So it's kind of a weird loop in that situation. The only 2 fields that I pretty much use are an image field and a caption. You can put whatever you want down here, but that's kind of the bare bones of it. So once you have those fields set up, and that image field you set up just like you would a regular image field out of the box, out of core. Then we go to manage form display, which is like the best thing about Drupal 8, I think. It's fantastic that you can do all of this. Looks like that, nothing super complex. And then ignoring manage display for now, we're going to go back to edit the bundle, and we do the type provider is your source field. So whether you're doing document, video, whatever field that you set up for this type of image or media bundle, that's where that's going to go. The rest of it, I always leave as default. You can do things like gathering EXIF data, which is the data that a digital camera now stores and brings along with your files, but why are you going to gather all that extra crap unless you have like a super photo-driven website that people actually care about that? Like nobody going to the U of M Law School's website or something like that is going to care about EXIF data, so I don't collect it. But you can if you want. So this is just default settings. So now what do we do with that image bundle that we created? Absolutely nothing yet, because we have to create a couple other things. We need to go to create the views that our libraries are going to use. When you install Media Entity, it has this media view that it creates, so why not just use that to build our other stuff? And once we install Entity Browser, now we have a view display that we can use to make that media library. So we set up types of Entity Browser, which is a display type, and end up looking like this. I use the grid format because it's a nice 4-column thing, like the D7 media library looked basically. Thumbnail media name are the fields. The only one that's super important is entity bulk select form. It sounds weird because it says form. It's basically a checkbox that says select this so that I can use it. If you don't have that, it's not going to do you any good. Nothing else will be working correctly. And then I use Views Infinity Scroll too because I like it. You don't have to. You can use a pager or whatever you want, but that's how I do it. So definitely include that one, otherwise it will be unfun. And image, video, documents, I filter them by type just so that people don't have to search through other things when they're looking at their library. The embed field, I allow all 3 so that I don't need 3 different buttons in CK Editor to upload different things. That's just a personal choice. So this one I expose the filter so that somebody can also sort by different things. So next we're going to need some image styles. And I use a lot of them, and basically some of them come from modules. Other ones are just, if you have a design, I'm going to build an image style for every single aspect ratio on that design, just because it makes things easier when I'm trying to build and theme stuff. And it's not a whole lot of overhead, I don't think, so you might as well do it. That way you have a little bit more control. One thing that's different in D8 is there's not really a good Retina module yet. There is one, but it doesn't really work with image effects all that well. So good thing is responsive will let you use breakpoints and 2x image styles so that you don't even need a Retina module anymore, which is fantastic. 2x breakpoint or 2x styles are read by the breakpoints file, which we'll get to in a bit, but they're basically an image style that's twice as big. Whatever you're doing on the original image style, just make it twice as big. So responsive images is a sweet core module, uses a picture tag, just like picture did in D7. And then it uses this breakpoints YAML. There is a non-breakpoints way to do it that's based off like viewport width. That's actually the responsive core module's way to do it, which I don't really use simply because I'm not super familiar with it. And I like to set my breakpoints exactly like I like to set them in SAS so that my design breaks at the same point as my images. Makes sense to me. So I do it that way, and this is Bartik's default breakpoints thing. And this is what it looks like. So what I do is I copy it into my base theme so that I can set it up how I want. And I have all of these different breakpoints. And then you'll notice one super cool thing is this multipliers. Anytime I have that, that means that I can, if I have a 2x style assigned to that and it's a Retina screen, it's just going to automatically use that. It just knows how to do it. You can also set up this thing called breakpoint groups, where you can have one file with different groups, and then your theme will read, okay, do you want the video breakpoints group? Do you want the document breakpoints group? Or however you set them up. So it's highly customizable. And once you have that set up and you clear your cache, then you'll be able to select this breakpoint group in your responsive style. So this is what I would set up for banner images. And I've got 4 different styles because I like them to break at multiple different spots, so I'm never loading a super large image. And then I've got 2 for responsive. And basically select one image style per breakpoint, and then assign the one that you want. The nice thing about this is how I kind of cheat Retina, I guess. So I set up a responsive style for anything under 600 pixels. It's just a size that made sense to me. And then you just use like the bottom breakpoint, because min with 0, if I don't assign anything else above it, it's just going to use that style. So I can pick the lowest mobile style for a 600 pixel image and use it in Retina and regular and not have to assign anything else, and it'll just load that one image smartly depending upon the device I'm on, which is kind of cool. It's a little closer shot of what they look like. And 600 pixels I just came up with because the file size is not super bad. And we'll talk about file sizes and how to reduce that in a little bit. but it makes it convenient. So one of the other pieces we need is view modes. Why do I have this? Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. So view modes are just like they were in D7, but they're in structure display modes. And I basically set them up for any image style that is going to be used or be viewed by a user outside of views, which is a mouthful because we're talking about views and view modes and display modes, and there's a mode for everything. But pretty much if I have an image style that I'm going to be showing to somebody that's not going to be used like as a thumbnail or in the back end or something like that, I'm going to create a view mode for it so that I can bring them into places and display them however I want. For me, I use full for document and video because I don't need different view modes to display those. They're just responsive the way it is, or they're just a file icon. So basically I base this all off images and don't really care about video and documents at this time. So once you have your view mode set up, now we can go back to our media bundle. We kind of came full circle and we're going to manage the displays for it. So there is a setting on your default, which I don't have a screenshot of it, but there will be a little field down here that says allow custom displays or customized display or something like that. And then you can check boxes for all of the view modes that you want to enable for this media bundle. Once you enable them, they'll line up on the top, and then you can set your image styles based on that view mode. So anytime I use view mode banner, it's going to automatically pull in my responsive banner image style and just display it, which is fantastic. The nice thing is too is, so I have a caption field, but I'm disabling it for banner images. That way I don't have to get rid of it in jQuery or Sass or do something else like that or a template file. It just automatically does it because I can set how it's displayed. Okay, so now let's talk about entity browsers, or browser entity. I like browser. So entity browser is basically your media browser. And modal is the way to go in my train of thought for everything except for your embedded, which already pops up in a modal. So then you would have a modal inside of a modal, which sounds kind of inception-y and scary. So we use iframe for that. But everything else is modal because otherwise you're going to have this big media view display on your admin node, and who the heck wants to see it? We'll just pop it up when we want to show it. And tabs I like instead of like a drop-down selector, just that way people can instantly see, well, I'm viewing existing, or I want to upload a new one or whatever, and I can just get to it right away. Selection display is basically a preview of the image that you select out of the library before you actually place it on the node. It's an extra step for editors in my mind, and basically it's just showing them a larger version of the image and maybe a caption if it has one, which is about the only useful part of it I've found. But it's just extra weight that I'm adding in there that I feel isn't needed. But that's just the way that I think about it. So once you have the modal selected, you click onto your next screen and you set the width of the modal. If you leave it blank, it's responsive, which is good. Everything should be. You set the height. Select image, that link text, since we are doing the auto open, which I just found out about and now love. Totally makes sense to me now. Link text would be, okay, if I'm going to use an existing, then it would say, well, select image. Well, I already selected that I want to use existing. Why do I need extra links? So I'm going to click auto open, and it'll just automatically open that modal once somebody chooses existing, which will become clear in a little bit. But auto open, rule of thumb, I always use it. Widget selector, this is that selection display preview thing, which since I'm not using it, it's blank, so we'll just skip on to the next. Selection display is basically the same sort of thing, always blank. And here's the meat of the browser. So widgets are what runs your functionality. So we built a library view that we're going to want to plug in here, and then also we're going to want a form to allow people to upload new images. That way they wouldn't have to say, well, I really can't find an existing one I like, so I'm going to click out of the modal, go back to my field, upload a new one. Why not just do it all in one spot? So I like to show the library first, and once you do that, basically people can choose their existing, then they see the library right away. And then I choose the upload, and these will just be in tabs, so you can set them up in any order you want. But your widget plugin, that little pull down, it'll have these lists of things called view, upload image, upload document, depending upon what modules you use. You use view, set up your library, choose your image browser or your video browser or whatever view this is for. And then once you have your library in there, choose entity form for your upload. And the reason that you're going to want to use entity form instead of upload images, which like I want to upload images right away because that makes sense. I'm building an image browser. Entity form uses the form display of the media bundle. So if I choose upload images, all of a sudden my caption field is meaningless because you won't actually be able to use it. There's also a weird file type error that you get when you started doing this. I don't know if it's still there. I haven't seen it in a few months, but I've been doing entity form for a few months. That unless you have a very specific setup in Ajax, it'll just say, well, you're uploading an image, but we don't recognize it anyway, so you have no joy. So go with entity form. And then once you do that, you can select your entity type, which will be media. Then you select your image, and you select your form mode that you want to display. So you could set up different form modes for different browsers if you wanted to, which I do. I have a background field that I use a special browser on because I want specific settings. One thing to note, the entity type media, when you pull down that drop down, you're going to see media and media bundle. It would kind of make sense for it to be media bundle, except for when you do that, it chooses the form that the admin UI uses to build your media bundle. So you would have got that initial edit display where you can like choose your source field and do you want EXIF, and like that's meaningless if you're trying to use this. So I always go with media, bundle of image or video or whatever. I always use upload form. So embedded browser is going to work exactly the same way with a couple of changes. It's going to be iframe. Oh, and video and document work exactly like images. There's no change. It's just whatever bundle you're bringing in. But this one, you're going to want iframe so that you don't get the modal within the modal. And then for your widgets, now I'm using all three in one button. So I have my embedded browser library, and then I'm going to add all of the plugins for each one of the forms for each one of the bundles. So I'll have 4 tabs on this. One to add video from the web, one to upload images, one to upload documents, and then the library itself. So we're almost there, and actually I'm talking really quick, so we'll have some time for live demo and a lot of questions if you guys want. I'm going kind of fast. So, media fields of dreams. Yes, I love puns. Okay, so actually using this stuff. We now have a structure and display, or a structure to do all of this. How do we actually do it? So since we're using entities, we have to use a reference field to get to those entities. Media is content, so we're referencing content right away. Once we do that, now we have, okay, what type of content do you want to reference? So you could actually use this for blocks, taxonomies, basically any sort of content entity thing can be put into a reference, which is really sweet. But there's one for media. You can choose how many you're going to allow, just like with any field. And then the important part of this slide is the reference type down at the bottom. Reference method default, I have not for the life of me been able to figure out what that does, so I just always leave it default. But the important thing is you want to just choose the bundle for the field that you're using. So you could have a field that actually allows file, video, image, whatever you want, and if that works for you, that's great. But I like to kind of control the editors a little bit more so that they're not doing things that I don't anticipate as much as possible anyways. So we do image for an image field, video for a video field, things like that. Form display for this, so this is going to be a banner field. And I want to use inline entity form complex. That's really important. Inline entity form is a module that basically changes the way that this form field works and what's allowed in it. So there's 2 different versions of it. There's an inline entity form simple and an inline entity form complex. And the reason I say you want to use the complex one is because simple will not allow you to get to your media browser. So the only thing you can do is upload a single image, which that's what we had to start with, so that sucks. So we want to use complex, which will give us this extra checkbox that says allow users to add existing media entities, which is super important because that is our browser. The entity browser will be whatever type of field that you're doing. This is why we set one up for each type of media. And then autocomplete matching contains or starts with, doesn't really matter since we're not using autocomplete. And then you click update, save, and then set it up on how it's going to look on the node. So this is just a field on a node, by the way. Since we're using entities, we have to do rendered entity as our format, and then you can select your view mode. And this is why you set up all those different view modes so that you can actually display your image however you want. And then this is what it's going to look like when somebody actually uses it. They can edit their caption if they want once they selected it, so that you can do that for existing images. Note that that will change it for everywhere this image is used. And I did some CSS. This is how I do banner images. So it won't look like that out of the box. You kind of have to do that a little custom, but that's how it'll behave at least. So what else do we want? We want to be able to embed stuff, which it's cool that you can embed images right out of the box in Core. You can add a caption, which we are going to disable because we're doing captions custom. But we want to be able to do PDFs, videos without just linking to them and doing that stuff. So in order to do that, we have to create a button that will allow us to embed something. Custom button, so we go to Edit, Entity, Embed, and we want to label it Media just because that's what we're embedding. We'll choose the entity type of entity, so you can embed a lot of different things. But we're going to be doing entities, and then our entity type is media. Media bundle, I'm going to leave blank because I want to use all of them. And then allow embed display plugins. These look really familiar. Those are your view modes that you set up, so you can allow all of them. You can allow any of them. I don't know why you'd put a banner field in a WYSIWYG, so I leave that one unchecked. And basically just give people small, medium, large, things like that. Choose your browser, which is our embed browser. And then you can add a custom button icon. Display the entity after selection. That would be your selection display plugin thing that we disabled in the entity browser. So we leave that one unchecked. So now we have a button. What the heck do we do with it? Let's go into the CKE settings for our text formats. And one of the really cool things about 8 is that you can just drag and drop stuff onto your toolbar, take it away as needed. It's really cool. So once you expand that little show your groups thing, you'll see your embed button, and then you can drag it on. Do not forget to get rid of the old image button, otherwise it will be super confusing for your editors. A couple of important things are the filters. So you'll have some new ones. You'll have display embedded entities, which if you don't check that, nothing's going to work. So that's important. Track images, upload via the text editor. Sounds kind of creepy because who likes tracking things? But basically that just means if this image is embedded somewhere, let's say we're embedding, I don't know, an image of cats or something like that, and then we want to use it as a banner field and change the caption, this will remember that you changed it over here because it's tracking that FID. So it'll go through and figure all of that stuff out and then change it in both spots. Align images is basically your float left and right, even though you have to do some custom CSS in order to use it with media, but it works pretty slick. And then, again, uncheck captions because we're using that field. So we don't want to use Drupal's default caption method. Otherwise, the caption that you would be added wouldn't be shown anywhere because we're showing the fields from our media bundles. One of the important things is the order. So the images one should always go at the top. That way you're pulling in the images before you're filtering tags and things like that. And then I always display, align, and track, just because that's the order that they're showing in the list. I don't know that it's super important. I haven't dug into arranging it all that much, but I know that this works. And then one of the important things is if you're filtering, which basic text does out of the box, you have to, oh, there's their close-up. You have to add all of these tags to your allowed HTML tags, otherwise it will strip your images up. That's one of the biggest things I noticed on issue queues and things like that. They're like, well, we followed all these steps, but we're still not seeing any images, or it's saying image restricted, or something like that. So if you add all of these tags, which just remember them, so you'll be able to do it. The key one is the Drupal data entity. If you have that, it'll be fantastic. And I'll put a close-up of this one for sure in the talk description so that people can just copy it from there because it's kind of long. And then basically, this is how it works. Is anybody counting the 80s references? There'll be a quiz. No?
Nice.
Yep, that's what you get in your caption, just goes right in there. All right, so bring on the fancy. Now we're into the cool stuff. That's basically media in Drupal 8, but there's some advanced things that you can do with it that we like to do. And I love this guy because he is an 80s German pop singer whose name is Fancy. That's his actual name, so I thought it fit really well. I want to be him. Focal point, huge. Also going to be in Core, hopefully soon. In the media initiative in Core, they're looking at focal point. It's one of the listed modules, which is fantastic. If you don't know what this is, we use this heavily in Drupal 7 as well. Basically, instead of just scale and crop, you can say focal point scale and crop. That's all you have to do is add the style effect. And then you get that little crosshairs. And what that does is an editor can drag that around. So if I'm using this image in a responsive way that changes aspect ratio, or I'm going to use it in multiple spots, it'll just know to preserve Ferris Bueller's head so that you can see it everywhere. So this is that same image used in 3 different spots, and it just shifts the part that's preserved in the viewport, basically, which is fantastic. Sweet little module. Image style quality, another huge one. So we were talking about Retina and having images that are twice as big as the regular styles. Well, that's going to mean files are like 4 times as big, which really sucks. So what you do is you add the image style quality module, because Drupal's got its regular image toolbox where you can set, I want all images to be 80%, right? Well, if I'm uploading a 4 times as big file for Retina, I want that to be extra small, or as small as possible, so I'm going to set individual image style quality percentages that'll take, okay, 30% of the 80, and now I don't know what that math is, but it's way less of a file size. And the crazy thing is it's a non-noticeable difference. Like, I've never gone above 40% on a Retina screen, and I do that for extremely small files. If I'm doing a banner image, I'll set it at 25%, and it'll still be sharper than it is on a regular screen. But the file size will be like half of what it would be otherwise. So, really cool. I'm a huge paragraphs guy. I use it all the time, both for editors to play with it and just as a site building tool for myself. One of the first things that we did with it, which we used to do in FPP, and we do this in Drupal 7 in almost the same way, is an image widget. Why wouldn't you just let people place an image wherever the heck they want, right? So I set this up, and if I'm going to build an image widget, well, I don't really want to choose their image style for them. I'm going to let them pick it. So I'm going to have a select list on there that says, okay, what image style do you want to put in here? And then I'm going to let them do a link. I'm going to let them do a summary if they want to put some text around it. Widget title, those are just things that I do. Layout is a cool one. That's how I use Flexbox to do paragraphs layout. That's like a whole other talk, but if you're curious about it, ask me. You'll see it in action here in a little bit. So I've got all those set up, but now I have to actually make them work. And this is basically for the link and the image style, because Drupal's not going to know that those things should all just be in that image, right? And what image to choose. So you have to create a Twig template for it. And there's a really cool module called Twig Tweak, which is super important for this because we're using rendered entities. And they're very, very difficult just to put on something in Twig without this Twig Tweak function, which will say, okay, if my style list says full, then my image is going to be the Drupal entity, which is media from that field with view mode set full. So it's basically telling what view mode to use. And then I get my link and my area and all of that stuff set up. And it ends up looking like this, which if you're not a coder is probably going to be a little scary, but it's actually kind of easy to pick through. And it will behave like this. Yeah, I'm descriptive with my admin descriptions. Notice layout fill remainder. That's one of the cool flex things so that you can just create fluid columns, which is nice and not have to have your editors do math. So now I have 2 images just like that, and editors can kind of build their own page however they like, which is really sweet. All right, so how are some of the other people doing things? Like, I started in Drupal 8 almost immediately. We chose to look at Lightning just because they were doing a lot of things that we wanted to do, and so why not just use out-of-the-box stuff? Some of the things were great. They have a custom plugin that they wrote, which is if you're a developer, I'm not that much. You can write custom widgets for your entity browser that'll say, okay, upload a rainbow or something like that. You know, you can do entirely custom plugins, which is sweet. But they built one for image and file fields, so rather than using referenced entity fields, they can just say, file field, image field, find my media browser, and it'll just work, which is fantastic. The bad thing about that is it doesn't work with fields, so you can't have captions, which sucks. Otherwise, you end up with Top Gun being a fighter jet movie instead of a volleyball movie, which is bad. That's a problem, yeah. Other than that, they're pretty good. And that was the only one I looked at, mainly because I didn't want to install Thunder this morning and try and figure out what they were doing. So if you know Thunder, that'd be great, or any other distribution, how are they doing it. So also, when I was researching this talk and getting some of the verbs, media is moving into core soon, like they're saying late 8.3, 8.4 possibly. So what's that going to look like? And will any of this stuff still be valid in 2 months, which was an important thing. I'm giving an hour talk. I want you to be able to use it for a while. So media in core is basically just going to provide a reusable media library just like we already built. It's going to use almost all of the same modules. Some of the important things, though, is for video, it's basically just going to be YouTube, Vimeo, remote sources. There's not going to be a video upload as far as anybody has posted online anyways yet. PDF is not going to be a thing, which I thought really weird. Like, that's still going to have to be brought in through contrib, video, document, entity, and all of that stuff. Like, PDFs, everybody uses them, everybody puts them on a website. Why would you not just include that? But I don't know. So audio, tweets, PDF, Facebook, all will be brought in through contrib. So I'm guessing that media and core will mesh pretty well with what we just built. So hopefully. Media Essentials is going to be what it's called, and then there's going to be like Media Extended that'll include some of these contrib modules, and some of that stuff is the less that I read about it, but that post was in like February, so I'm not sure exactly where they're at right now. But they were saying 8.3 or 8.4. So that is pretty much it. I do have a blog post on the Electric Citizen website that covers exactly what I just covered, step by step, with all of the stuff. So if you didn't catch it in this talk and you're super interested, definitely go there. Otherwise, find me, hunt me down, and Jesus, we still have 25 minutes for questions, or if you guys want a live demo of anything or want to hear more 80s music, let me know. That's all I've got, though. Questions? Yeah?
This will be a bit of a broad question. I don't know, maybe you touched on some of it with the media and core stuff, but obviously there's a lot to putting that together.
Yep.
But I'm wondering, like, if there's anything in the process or how the setup works for you today that you want to see change or done differently, anything that stands out. Aside from it just being core.
Yeah. No, that's an awesome question. I set this up so that it behaves how we have it behaving in 7, which I really liked. I guess the only thing that I would really want to change is to cut down on some of the overhead. Like, we had to build how many different things to get something that worked. Whereas if you could say, well, if I'm going to create an image style, have a checkbox that says create a view mode for it, something like that. So some things just to kind of smooth out the site building process would be nice. As far as an editing standpoint, I don't know that you could get a much simpler way to do it than just that field that's add a new one, choose an existing one, call it a day. I did look at, there's a module called File Browser, I think, that uses like DropZone.js and some cool things like that. I looked at that months ago before I built this and never got it to work. There was a bunch of fatal errors that I couldn't get past. But I think that Core is bringing in some of that. I know they're doing DropZone, which is nice. If you don't know DropZone, that's basically drag an image off your desktop, drop it in a field. You don't have to click upload anymore, which is sweet. And actually, that work on this too, even though I don't have DropZone installed. I was building a site the other day and doing test content and didn't even think about it, just drag and dropped it and it actually worked. So that was pretty sweet. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you just said that what you were doing here is getting it to work the way that it did in...
The way that we use it in 7.
Yes, but still, like in Drupal, and I was just talking to somebody at lunch actually, that media handling is not one of Drupal's strengths. It's an area where it gets criticism. So
Yep.
in Drupal 7, you still have to build something out on your own, right, to get it to... Like, I wouldn't imagine they took a step backwards in media handling.
Yeah, no.
They're trying to
But
make it better.
there was a suite that brought all of this together. You still had to build your file types and your view modes and stuff like that and assign them. But there was a suite that basically said, we're going to need all of these things. Let's put them in one spot. Whereas that doesn't exist in 8 yet. So it's not that they took a step back. It's just they didn't do what 7 had already done yet. They didn't just wrangle it all into one spot, which is what they're trying to do. So
Drupal 8, the strategy was to break some of those media modules into multiple parts so that it was more flexible and could be reused in different ways. So there's more things to install and set up now.
But then you can also take what you want. Yeah.
How close are the techniques that you're using to what you anticipate showing up in Drupal core? And what will happen when you launch a site with these techniques and let's say a year from now 8.5 comes out and some form of this is now in core?
That is almost a direct quote from an issue queue or a comment on the media initiative that says basically, okay, this is the route that a lot of people use to build this stuff. This is just, if you don't use Lightning or an install, this is pretty much the only way that people have done it. So I've modeled this, and without the paragraphs and Flex and all of that stuff, just the media structure I got from a French blog post that this guy figured it out, and I kind of modeled after that and then took it a little farther. But since almost everybody's using it like this, and everybody's building sites, the people in core are saying, well, we're using most of the same modules, we're just packaging them together and calling them something else basically. So there should be, and they're trying to make a pretty easy way just to say, okay, it's like when they switched to layout plugin to layout discovery and panelizer. Like you got a fatal error until you went through and did update PHP and changed the name. That's pretty much what they're hoping to do just for media. Or at least that's what people are hoping that they do and what they're saying they're going to try to do, from what I read.
And I think they delayed putting some of these things into 8.3 specifically because they wanted to get them a little bit more stable to avoid having an experimental phase.
Yeah.
Where then it'd be really complicated. How do you, because if it's experimental, you can change the data model.
For sure.
And so I think they pushed it to a lot of the stuff to 8.4 specifically to help make the transition easier.
And I mean, the thing is too, like you can totally build this site and run this forever. You don't need to use the core media. You don't need to turn it on, if you have a site that's built like this. And then you just use that in a new site, or, do it in a dev site and see if it explodes or what has to be done. But yeah, we're hoping, and I think you're right, that they're delaying it so that there's less of those issues and things are way more stable. Because even though this right now is way more stable than it was 6 months ago when I started to build it, if you deviated from any one of these steps or tried to do anything on your own, fatal error, Ajax errors, left and right, it was a nightmare. So I went through 10 sites before I got one that actually worked. Any other questions? No?
I have a question, more of a comment.
Sure.
On the one slide, slide with the entity reference selection, you said you didn't know what else it did besides default. You can actually make a view and use that to select. It's not so useful with this because you have the entity browser. But if you like
Okay.
the taxonomy terms or something, you can make a view so you can put filters on.
Oh, nice.
Use that for your reference.
That is really sweet. Thank you. Yeah, I was like, what does that thing do? I keep changing it. It doesn't do anything. So that's awesome. That's good to know. Nice. Did everybody like catch that and know what part she was talking about? The
This back a ways.
that thing. Yep. A reference method. So that's cool. And yeah, you can actually build a view for your selection display plugin as well. The one that I always like don't do. The when you select an image, the little display preview thing, you can build a view for that so you can add kind of whatever you want. And this is all highly customizable. So it's sweet. Yep. Can anybody name all of the references in this? I had a lot of fun putting this intro together. Yeah. Yeah. Sweet.
Actually, I do have a
Yeah.
question. For the form display, we're using, I think it was the inline entity form complex.
Yep.
We always just use, set it to entity browser there. Is there some advantage to using that?
That way you get the upload new or use existing on the button on the node itself. Otherwise, you could just say, yes, add media, go to your entity browser, and you do have the library and the upload there. But I liked the way that ran in 7, where somebody could just add something new right away, mainly because I do site building, so I do a lot of dummy content, and I don't want to have to click and then upload when I could do it in one step.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the only reason for that, pretty much.
On your list of composer things at the beginning,
Yeah.
you had responsive image listed there, but you shouldn't have to do that because that's
Nope.
core.
Yeah, that one you don't have to install. I just listed it because it's one of the modules that I
Yeah.
use. But yeah, that's in core, which is nice. That's the only one of these that's in core as of right now. So
Have you featurized this yet?
I have. It was one of the first things I did, and how I learned features. Also, how I learned to hate the auto detect in features, which I also just learned how to shut off. So yeah, it's all featureizable, just like it was in D7, since it's all config, which is nice. There's a lot more things to featureize because you have all of your view modes, and then you have all of your image styles and your responsive stuff. So depending upon your strategy for setting up features, I package it all in one as of right now. But yeah, it's definitely featureized. Yep. Has anybody else had trouble with the auto detection in Drupal 8 features? Like when you add something, it backward detects everything and starts putting fields in your media in your everything. It really sucks, but there's a setting to turn that off, which is nice.
So, responsive image node. So I'm the responsive image, one of the maintainers for that.
Nice.
Just another way to do responsive images, unless you're changing aspect ratios, you can use just one breakpoint
Okay.
as it's coming out of the default. And then you can create a whole bunch of different image styles. And so from 2x, the largest amount of that the image will ever need to take up in your space. And then when you create the responsive image style, on that one breakpoint, you have an option to select multiple image styles and use the sizes attribute.
Okay.
And so then in the sizes field, you put how much space that's going to take up in the viewport. So whether it's like 100 view
Okay.
if it's the whole width.
Sure.
And then you select all the image styles that you want. And then the browser will figure out which of those to pick
Okay.
based on how many things
Nice.
there are.
Yeah, I had read up on that. It's just the whole choose your size and percents, and like I didn't want to figure it out. So it's nice to know what it actually does. But
That just results in source set, right? So
Yep.
having a picture element, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, source set plus sizes. So I might be working on some documentation for that.
Yeah.
that sprints tomorrow.
It was just unfamiliar, like I knew breakpoints because I use them in 7, so.
Yeah.
But,
Lots of different ways to do it. Just
yeah,
sharing a different
for sure, for sure. Yeah,
Adobe Lightroom is pretty, the library function is a pretty hardy tool for sorting, organizing folders, keywords, titles, captions.
I've never looked at it.
Pardon?
I love Adobe and I know most of their programs. I've never looked at Lightroom because I don't take photos really. So I never really use it, but
Thinking of the potential for integration.
for integration, okay.
Where one can, I know there's a plugin in WordPress where a guy took a very light approach to try and make it strong, but not try and do everything, except to do it one way right from Lightroom into WordPress, and I can see
Sure.
something like that being super valuable.
Yeah, that'd be a sweet module because I do know people that heavily use Lightroom. Like they take a ton of photos and they absolutely love it. Yeah, I think anything that you can integrate into anything stably and make life easier is worth it. So, you know, as a site builder though, I will not be building that module. No other questions? We're 10 minutes early. Yeah? Nice. Well, thank you.